We usually think of love as this feeling, right? Something that just happens. But what if it's more than that? What if it's actually a strategy? In this explainer, we're going to dive into Kenneth E. Hagin's book, Love, the Way to Victory. And it's got this powerful, maybe even surprising take on what love really is and what it can do for you.
So let's just chew on that for a second. What if love isn't just a passive feeling, but an active strategy for victory? I mean, something you choose to use to overcome the stuff life throws at you. Hagin basically argues that this is the key to winning battles not just with other people, but, and this is crucial, the ones inside of ourselves. So let's break down what that actually looks like.
Okay, first things first. We've got to get on the same page about what kind of love we're even talking about here, because it's probably not what you're thinking. Hagin makes this super important distinction right from the get-go.
So here's his core idea, this God kind of love he talks about. It's not that warm, fuzzy feeling you get that totally depends on whether someone's being nice to you. Nope. He says it's a deliberate choice. It's a spiritual force that comes from deep inside you, from your spirit. The bottom line is, it's an action, not a reaction. That's a huge shift in thinking right there.
And he uses this verse to back it all up. He's essentially arguing that this kind of active, choice-based love is the #1 proof that a massive internal change has happened to someone, what he calls being born again. So you see, in his view, it's not just about being a good or nice person. It's way deeper. It's the sign that a real, fundamental spiritual transformation has actually taken root.
Okay, so if this love is a spiritual force, it has to be fighting against something, right? Well, according to Hagin, the main battlefield isn't out there. It's in here. It's an internal struggle against our own most basic natural instincts.
And come on, we all know this feeling. We've all been there. Someone does you wrong, and what's that first immediate gut-level reaction? It's to get even, right? That desire for payback just kicks right in. You want to give them what they've got coming. Hagin says that's just our default setting. That's the natural man doing its thing.
And he tells this really personal story to make it crystal clear. He had a relative who told a flat-out lie about him. And his first thought? That's it. I'm done. I'm giving her the old treatment. Completely cutting her off. But then, as he's literally about to cross the street to avoid her, he said something rose up inside him and just stopped him. That internal check, that little stop sign in his spirit, that, he says, was this new kind of love wrestling with and winning against his natural reaction.
You can actually see this whole conflict laid out really clearly in the book of Galatians. It basically describes two paths you can take. On one side, you've got what it calls the works of the flesh. Think of this as our raw, unfiltered gut reactions. Hatred, strife, anger, all that stuff. And on the other side, you've got the fruit of the Spirit. Hagin's point is that this good fruit can only grow when you let that spiritual love take charge. So the big takeaway here is that in every moment of conflict, you're standing at a fork in the road, and you have to choose.
So, if this is a battle, how do you win it? What's the secret weapon? Hagin says it all boils down to one single, absolutely critical action: forgiveness.
And let's be clear, he's not talking about this like it's a nice suggestion or just a good idea. No, in this way of thinking, real, genuine forgiveness is the turning point. It is the decisive move on the battlefield. It's the moment you actively choose the spiritual path over the natural one. And for Hagin, it is completely non-negotiable if you want to walk in this kind of love.
But what does true forgiveness even mean? Well, Hagin tells this unforgettable story about a woman who came to him for prayer. He asks her if she's holding anything against anybody. And man, she just launches into this super detailed story about how this other woman wronged her. The kicker? She says it'll be 8 years ago next Tuesday. 8 years. And she had the date circled on her mental calendar. She claims she'd forgiven her, but the bitterness was so fresh. And that's his whole point. True forgiveness means you willfully let it go. You stop replaying the tape. This really gets to the heart of the standard that's set in the book of Matthew. You know the story. Peter asks Jesus, "How many times should I forgive someone? Like 7 times?" And the answer he gets isn't 7. It's 70 times 7. And that wasn't a math problem. It was a symbol for something limitless, something that never runs out. Forgiveness isn't a transaction. It has to be a lifestyle.
And Hagin really drives home how high the stakes are with this quote. It's so powerful. He basically says holding on to unforgiveness is like choosing to drink poison or play with a rattlesnake. Think about that. He sees it as something that doesn't just harm the other person, it's a self-destruct button. It's spiritually deadly to you, the one holding on to it. It poisons your faith, blocks your prayers, and just wrecks you from the inside out.
Okay, let's be real. This sounds hard. I mean, battling your own nature? That's a tall order. So why bother? What's the payoff? Well, in this last section, we're going to look at what Hagin says are the tangible, real-world rewards you get for actually winning this internal fight.
And we're not just talking about feeling good about yourself or getting some kind of spiritual gold star. The core claim here is that choosing to live this way produces actual, concrete, measurable results. We're talking tangible changes in your health, your life, your entire situation.
So Hagin lays out this whole list of incredible benefits he connects directly to this lifestyle, pulling from scriptures like Psalm 34. And he argues these aren't just random lucky breaks, they're direct consequences. It's a cause and effect relationship. For example, he says things like keeping your tongue from evil and actively seeking peace. Those aren't just nice things to do. They are the cause that produces the effect of a long, good life and having your prayers answered.
Let's look at a real-world example he gives. There was this pastor who was physically sick. He had stomach ulcers, and he was super bitter because another church had opened up in a small town. His own church attendance was stuck, hovering right around 113 people. So Hagin gets him to make a choice. Forgive the other pastor and actually start praying for his success. And what happened? The pastor's ulcers completely healed. And his own church? Attendance more than doubled to over 250 people. The results were undeniable.
But maybe the most traumatic story he tells is about a couple whose little girl was suffering from a terrible case of epilepsy. I mean, a specialist told him it was the worst case he'd seen in his entire 38-year career. The parents were praying, they were trying to have faith for her healing, but absolutely nothing was changing.
So what was the holdup? Well, Hagin pinpointed that the mother was holding on to unforgiveness toward a family member, and he called it a spiritual blockage. She was at a crossroads. She had to make a choice. And right there, in that moment, she decided, okay, I'm choosing to walk in love. And based on that decision, that act of faith, she commanded the sickness to leave her daughter. And instantly, the seizure stopped. Just like that. And years later, the parents reported she'd been in perfect health ever since.
And that brings us right back to where we started, with a choice. Hagin's whole framework really just presents two very different ways to live. If holding on to bitterness and anger is like drinking poison, then this God kind of love and forgiveness, well, that's the antidote. So the final question really isn't about what somebody else did to you. The question is, what will you choose to do about it?